Hi everyone! Welcome to week 7 in Lit 215. Can you guys believe we're starting our third novel this week? I know we are just barreling through a lot of literature all at once. Saw lots of great feedback about Little Fires Everywhere, so I hope you enjoyed that glimpse into Asian American literature specifically. So we're going to start Internment this week, which is considered Muslim American literature, also influenced by Middle Eastern American literature. But what we're going to focus on primarily is that Muslim American ethnic and religious piece. So let's go ahead and get started with the assignments for this week. We've got a couple of readings, pages 1 through 108 of Internment. It is a quicker read, I think, than Little Fires Everywhere. It's considered a YA literature, young adult, so it might be not as lexically difficult, but I think that it really tackles some heavy themes. So you might give yourself some time. Again, break it into chunks. Do a chapter a night if that helps you. Chapter or two. Don't feel like you have to tackle it all at once. And then there's 2 videos I'd like you to watch. One of them is an interview with Samira Ahmed, who is the author of this text. And one is a PBS special revisiting the Japanese internment. And I'll explain in a second why I'd like to start there. So, besides those readings, you'll have Reading Quiz 7 and Discussion Board 7 this week. Pretty typical of what we've done so far. I would also just like to introduce you to our reading list assignment, which is not due until next week, so don't panic, it's not due this Sunday, but I think it's always a good idea to kind of know what's coming. So that's what I'll cover in this video this week, and hopefully I won't keep you too long. So let's start just with Internment. So this is a letter from Samira Ahmed, who is the author of Internment. She is Indian American and Muslim American. So I wanted to sort of read her ideas about the text before I have you guys jump into it, because I think this is a really great way of sort of summarizing the context of the novel. So she says, Internment straddles boundaries, contemporary and speculatives, past and future, fear and hope. I write in these spaces because this is where I live. American, immigrant, Indian, Muslim. In theory, this country is made of infinite identities, but now more than ever, I'm a half outsider. So she started Internment in 2016, and I think even in the first chapter of the text, we get this idea that Layla, the main character of Internment, is very much probably how Samira herself envisioned herself as a teenager in the US. This idea that she's balancing several different identities and fighting between who she is as a person and who she's perceived to be. So she says, I wrote the first words of Internment in January 2016. The Republican presidential primary was in its early stages, so this is just before the election, which is obviously relevant. And then says that the themes of the campaign and of the future presidency were well cemented. Us versus them, border walls, Mexicans as criminals, Black Americans as thugs, queer Americans as deviants, guns over children's lives, a Muslim ban, a national registry. So these sort of current events that Samira Ahmed is discussing is something I want you guys to kind of think about as you read through the novel. Some of these you'll likely remember from when President Trump was going through the presidential primary and also the course of his presidency. And although these are political topics and they are controversial, I want to sort of honor the reality of many of these events in how they make particularly Muslim Americans feel. So even if you disagree with Samira's political leaning, I want you to recognize that the Muslim ban, for example, was a real piece of legislation put forward by the Trump presidency, and it caused real harm for Muslim Americans. So she goes on to say, America had been down the road of paranoia and ethnic bias before, the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II. But it's not just our past. As I write this, immigrant children are being ripped from their parents' arms and indefinitely detained in present-day internment camps. Here we are again, fear-mongering based on a group's identity. So you can see a little bit of the inspiration for the text from Samira here. And she kind of goes on to say that she wrote this text as a way to come to terms with a lot of the feelings that she was having, not only as a Muslim American, as an Indian American, as an immigrant, as an outsider. So I want you guys to kind of reflect on that and some of these events and just kind of ask yourself where you stand and how it compares to her experience. So, this text is interesting because it's not, I think, sort of racially specific as much as it is ethnically so. So this text is considered Muslim American literature. And the reason for that is, imagine Muslim Americans and Muslims as a group in the US similar to Jewish Americans. They are from a large range of racial backgrounds, a large range of immigrant backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and this is the case for many communities in the US, but particularly for Muslim Americans. So Islam is the third largest religion in the US, and although Muslim Americans make up only 1.1% of the US population, that's still significant. A lot of Muslim Americans have a history with their family through slavery, either coming here from Africa or the Ottoman Empire, British India. There's also been an increase in Muslim American immigration from Turkey, Pakistan, North Africa, and the Middle East in recent years. So the Institute for Social Policy notes that this is one of the most racially diverse groups in the US. And as you can kind of see from this Newsweek cover, what a Muslim American looks or seems like is going to be, you can't really put a tag on that. So if you have kind of an image, and this is the case for, I do think this is also the case for other groups we've looked at so far, particularly Native American and Asian Americans, but for Muslim Americans, this is particularly salient. You don't necessarily have to look a certain way, but you do share a religious background. So this is something that we'll touch on in the book for sure. So if you're wondering about this type of literature in particular, they sort of categorize Muslim American literature as something called diasporic. So a diaspora is with, for example, Jewish Americans being, or Jewish peoples being relocated and removed from Israel. The diaspora of Muslim Americans is really the spreading of Muslims from Mecca and Medina. And this is really just the dispersion of any ethnic group from their original homeland. But this is happening from countries around the world and for various different reasons. People can choose to immigrate, but as is often the case, they may have come to the US as a result of slavery or a forced migration. So just keep that in mind. Muslim American literature was kind of believed to start with Malcolm X, who was a very famous Black activist and also Muslim American. His autobiography of Malcolm X is very good if you haven't read it. But this type of literature includes a large variety of texts, cultures, and types. It can kind of intersect with other categories like African American, Arab American, South Asian, feminist literature. So there's really no one kind of category this falls under. But there is, like I said, a shared religious connection, and this idea, I have it written here, of Ummah, which is the idea that all Muslims, regardless of where they reside, are part of a global community that has sort of tightened as Muslims have been religiously persecuted. So when we look at internment in particular, themes that you'll encounter, particularly in this first section, are racism, absolutely, not just overt racism, although I think in this text it's a little more overt than Little Fires, but also subtle ways that Layla and her family are made to feel different and less than. Religious intolerance, why it's dangerous to deny the realities of something happening around you, and then also the importance of religion, language, and community. You'll notice in the first chapter, or chapters especially, there are some Urdu and Arabic words sprinkled into the text. And I want you to take special note of those words. Don't just skim over them. Stop, Google a word, find out what it means, why it's significant to the story, because language for Muslim Americans is particularly important, as those are, lasting clues to where a Muslim American originated from and the specific culture and background they come from. So I'm interested to see how you all approach this novel. It is a little more intense, a little more in your face but I want you to think about maybe why that is and why Samira Ahmed, as a Muslim American, as an Indian American, as a woman, why would she write this text in the way that she has? And what does it mean to us? So, as you get into internment, I'm really excited to see how we do. And then following that, just be thinking about our reading list due next week. The assignment sheet is in our Blackboard Week 7 folder and Week 8, just to kind of get you thinking. I do recommend using the SWIC library databases to find pieces. I've run through how to use the databases in another video, but I will post some other resources if you need. And please, if you're confused or not sure where to look, please reach out to me. Excuse me. So I think a lot of people had said they wanted to choose novels for our project, which is great. We do have a long course, so I'm fully confident you can do that. But don't be afraid to also use short stories, poems, spoken word pieces, even interviews I might accept as literature. So don't feel like you have to pick 5 books and then read those on top of the novels we are reading. But you do need at least 3 pieces of literature. Supplement that with, so say, for example, if I was choosing Muslim American literature for my topic, I might choose a novel, 2 short stories, and then 2 academic articles about Muslim American literature. So the reading list is going to be just a compilation of those 5 pieces that you're going to read. And all I need in the reading list is a citation for that reading, why you've chosen it, and sort of a general summary, and then how you think it's going to help you. I'll go over the kind of finer parts and an example next week, but I want you to start thinking about where am I going to look for these resources and how am I going to find them. So that's all I've got for this week, guys. I am really excited to talk to you on our discussion board. Please reach out to me at my email, laura.boville@swic.edu, if you need any help. You are amazing. We are almost halfway through, and I am so excited to keep it going. So I will talk to you guys soon.